Existing Australian literature illustrates a strong indication of racial prejudice and discrimination in the past and the present generations of society. Currently, the literature depicts two forms of racism, old and new racism. According to Current, the old racism is basically about beliefs of a rational hierarchy, such as the history treatment of indigenous Australians. Importantly, the new racism involves the mistreatment of cultural identity and practice. The denial and exclusion of asylum seekers is described by Avery and Argentinos to be the emergency of new racism in Australia. The overall strategy to prove that the oppression towards asylum seekers was not an act of racism is irrational. It states that such kinds of invalid views of minority groups should not be taken as rational, but should be understood as unreasonable premise. This brings up the ambiguity of new racism, as it targets the identities and practices of a particular culture, but never the individual or group.
Our research problem is about the new and old racism, especially about the new racism in our society. We would like to know what are the problems we have now and what is it. It's important to understand racism because Australia is a country with multiculturalism, which means there are many different groups of people having different religion and religion background, different color and different cultures. That is why the conflicts between different races happen. So it's necessary to know more about the foundational problem between the society we are living. So to make a better society we are having, so we have to find out what is the real problem and then we can solve it and live a better future.
To get more information about how people think about racism, firstly we can do online survey in the university community websites. However, if you do that, the questionnaire survey target will be limited to young people in their 20s. Secondly, we can find some case studies about how people think about racism in Australia. Finally, we can do interviews to people, picking them randomly on the road. This method helps us to solve the problem that target can be limited to particular generation. By doing this, we don't have to completely depend on literature and get a realistic data about how modern people really think about racism. For example, it is found that 97% of Aboriginal people who experience racism often in Australia, and Alex Carter, who is Aboriginal Reverend Auntie, says that we all know that racism is alive and well. We expect to find the real thoughts of different groups of people about racism.